Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome to the debut premiere of Temper Tantrums and I forgot the name of my own show, Temper Tantrums and Transformation. I am Shonda Carter. Although I love doing videos, I am like kind of brand new to this type of medium, which is the podcasting, which is doing the live videos, which is doing the talking. I'm used to entertaining. So I just ask for you to bear with me. Like I said, this is our debut premiere. It's humid outside. So, the hair didn't turn out right. So, that just creates its own problems. Anyway, I digress. So we are going to be today discussing the 5 W's of spiritual formation, spiritual transformation. We're not going to get into any disciplines or exercises today because, we have a long way to go down this journey. The spiritual journey is a long one. And it is a process, One of the things that I do, you have to give your credentials, like, not that you should listen to me but just to put you at ease as to I'm not some nut out here just making up my own stuff. I just graduated from Regent University with a master's degree in Christian spirituality and formation. And I'm also currently attending the School of Sustainable Faith to become a certified spiritual director. So there you go. You'll notice all of my other nuances and quirks as we continue on this journey. So, if you have any questions, you can contact me at www.women.org. You can also find me all over Facebook, but let's just get into it. So first of all, I know a lot of people, they always say, what is spiritual formation? Because that's, matter of fact, I'm going to give you a lot of the technical definitions, and then we can go on to the not so formal answers, but I want to make sure that you have the correct information. So you can know that this is spiritual, this is biblical, and we can, get into things like that. Spiritual formation, a definition from other ministries. It says, what is spiritual formation? Spiritual formation is the process of sanctification in which God uses every circumstance in a saint's life, that's us, for the purpose of conforming them to the image of Christ and making them into loving members of his families. And the scriptural basis of that is Romans 8:27 through 29. It says, theologically, spiritual formation is the regenerating work of the Holy Spirit upon the redeemed human heart, which produces the fruit of the character of Christ. Now, that's a lovely, 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 lovely definition. And sometimes when people ask me, what did you go to school for? I'm going to be honest. I did not go to school to get a career. I went to school to learn more about Christ. I was hitting a lot of roadblocks, a lot of things like, all of the formulas were no longer working for me. And there's an excellent book that I read. It's called The Critical Journey, which explains, all of the journeys that we take along the process of Christ. The process of being renewed. And one of the thing is, when you get to a certain point, when you start questioning a lot of things, sometimes you're looked upon as you've lost your faith, or, you're not a disciplined Christian, or, you're getting lazy. It's not my favorite, but one of the things that gets on my nerves is no matter what question you have you've lost your first love, do more. And then, I started doing more and I was not getting any results. It's kind of like, I tell my husband, it kind of felt like, I was exercising and then I started exercising more and more and more and more, and I wasn't losing any weight. I'm a visual person. I'm a visual learner. So a lot of times I will give examples as far as that goes, how my mind works. So hopefully we're there as far as that goes. But that's the main reason why I started. I wanted to I knew I didn't want a theology degree. I'm not a very good studier. especially things that I'm not interested in. And I know it's funny, like, how did you get a master's degree in formation, spirit, Christian formation, if you're not interested? It wasn't that I wasn't interested in Christianity, Jesus, Holy Spirit, Trinity. It was, I was not interested in doing formal studies as far as like learning Greek, learning Hebrew. I was not interested in becoming a pastor. I was not interested in becoming a professor. And that's one of the things that, with spiritual formation, it guides you along the path to become who Christ designed you to become, not who you think that you should become, or not what society says you should come. Because in society, if you love Jesus and you love religion and you want to, some kind of career, you got to be a pastor. That's not true for all of the occasions. However, that's been the majority of my experience because, a lot of people, well, what are you going to do? Are you trying to be a pastor? That's the first thing. And they're not wrong. It's like I don't get upset with people. However, it's once again a very confusing time to try to educate, those that are surrounded by you. In school, I found a community that was like kind of on the same journey that I was concerning that. But basically, bottom line, with a lot of talking in between, is spiritual formation is submitting yourself to the actual process. It's like, I know we say we surrender, but do you? I know we say, my life is not my own, but is it? So spiritual formation helps you to, helps you to ask yourselves those questions and helps you to honestly answer those questions and see where you really are. And not only to see where you are and then they just leave you hanging, they see where you really are and you allow Christ to come in and let's form this. A favorite book that I just read, a favorite quote from a book that I just read is, God's favorite ingredient is dust. Of course, we think of Adam, we think of dust, but sometimes people have been so hurt in their lives that their life is shattered. And the author made a point of their life has turned to like beyond pieces. It's dust, like everything that they thought they believed, everything that they thought that they stood for, it's all been shattered and, like she said, ground into dust. And she says it took her a while because when we're going through all of this stuff, no one thinks this way, like, the people of the Bible later, and some of them that have been walking with God for a while and recognize what is going on. There are some in the Bible that do that, but 9 times out of 10, you're not saying, you don't want to thank the Lord for the bad things that are happening. And when people are not hurting, give advice, they say things like that, like, oh, well, you should just thank God. And spiritual formation helps you to get to that place where you can thank God in those types of situations. And it's not always about studying. Spiritual formation is about experience. It's about relationship. It's about you and God, you and Jesus, you and the Holy Spirit. It's not a formula. Spiritual formation is not a formula. Another thing that I do, that I studied, is spiritual direction. Now, oh my gosh, I cannot tell you how many definitions that there are for spiritual direction, which is really funny because before attending my university, I'd never heard of spiritual direction. I am in Oklahoma. And I heard it, spiritual direction is real big on the East Coast and the West Coast. And we're right in the middle, which is really funny because I live in the Bible Belt. So I thought, well, isn't that interesting that, I live in the Bible Belt. However, I'd never heard of that. And all of the people that I talked to, that I try to speak with, they had never heard of it either. So I just thought that was really, really amazing to me how that happened. But so now we're going to get into a couple of the spiritual direction definitions. I'll try to keep it brief because there are a lot. And then I'm going to give you my definition of what I do. So spiritual direction is an ancient form of pastoral care with a tight focus. It examines how a person, the directee, actually pictures, experiences, and responds to the presence of God. In that sense, spiritual direction gently but persistently pushes for the truth of the relationship, not the illusion. By creating an atmosphere of leisure, quiet reflection, and ongoing prayer, and by offering spiritually sensitive questions and observations, the director helps the directee grow in the ability not only to see what the Father is doing, that's John 5:19, but to respond to the Father and live out the consequences of any response. This consistent focus on divine human interaction grows the directee's spiritual acuity, enhances prayer, and leads to an increase in faith, hope, and love. Now, isn't that a mouthful? I appreciate these types of answers, because when I was trying to research it, like I said, and asking people, what is this spiritual direction? Like, I don't know. And the really funny thing is that I direct Christian skits. So everyone's like, you're already a spiritual director. No, that's not what it is. So I think maybe that's the reason why I was attracted to it. Like, am I a spiritual director? I don't know. Am I? I don't know. So one of the things that I love is that I was attracted to it, but after experiencing it and reading about it, I realized that a spiritual director is what I needed for a few years before I even got to the point where I was ready to go to school. I'm trying to, my computer's not working here, and I'll be able to edit that out. I probably won't, because I like to keep it real. So, one of the things that I do love about that, I am definitely, here it is. Good thing, huh? One of the things that I did notice about spiritual direction is that it is definitely needed when you get to that point of this is not working. And I say that with caution, because some people, I really believe that the greatest gift of spiritual direction is permission to be who you are, permission to be where you are on your journey, permission to stop faking, permission to stop seeking answers and just be with God. That's what I really believe one of the greatest gifts of spiritual direction is. I'm a spiritual director. However, I have a spiritual director. I would not do this without a spiritual director, because we all need that accountability piece. So I'm going to read a couple more technical definitions. I just want you to get the feel for what it is. Here's another one. We define Christian spiritual direction then as help given by one Christian to another, which enables that person to pay attention to God's personal communication to him or her, to respond to this personally communicating God, to grow in intimacy with God, and to live out the consequences of that relationship. And that was written by William A. Barry and William J. Conley. They are authors of a wonderful book that I've written. Another definition: spiritual direction is a pastoral work that is historically termed the cure or care of souls. It is a scripture-directed, prayer-shaped care that is devoted to persona, singly or in groups. It's cultivated awareness that God has already seized the initiative. God has been working diligently, redemptively, and strategically before I appeared on the scene. Before I was aware, there was something here for me to do. And that is by Eugene Peterson. So as you can see, we're seeing, spiritual direction is like I would say one of the basics is soul care, which is really attractive, because sometimes, even though it's called spiritual directors, sometimes when you get too caught up in the things of church, we can forget about the soul. I know from the denomination that I came from, it was, just forget about your mind, will, and emotions. That's your soul, just feed your spirit, feed your spirit, feed your spirit. And my soul, I'm going to be honest with you, which is you're going to see as a theme throughout this podcast, is that my soul was acting up big time and I could not control it. And the information that I was given was, your spirit will override your soul. Oh my goodness. That was not happening for me. And I think it's a good thing because your soul has to go through the process of being saved. And I'm not going to get too much into denominations on this because I really want to get into the nitty-gritty of soul care. So don't worry, we're not going to be having arguments about which denomination is better, which practice, what to avoid. A spiritual director's job is not to a spiritual director's job is not to correct your theology. Let me give you my definition before I get into what it's not, because I don't want it to be confused. My definition with my quirky self is spiritual direction is a private and personal soul care ministry that guides you through spiritual blind spots. That means not seeing God anywhere or only where you expect to see him, to spiritual sight, finding God everywhere, especially where you least expect it. Now, this is where, that's nail polish. This is where my corny, quirky entertainment mind comes from, because I thought of, the prescription medication commercials. And, at the end of those commercials, they have side effects and they rattle off all of this stuff that's going to, that could include side effects. These are guaranteed side effects that will happen after spiritual direction. It is a deeper relationship with God, ridding oneself of false ways of thinking, responding to the Holy Spirit promptly, vigorously, joyfully, and consistently, an enhanced prayer life, being open, receptive, aware of, and responsive to the movement of the Spirit, and an increase in faith, hope, and love. Those have been the side effects that I have experienced, and a lot of people that I know have experienced as well. Now, I know we're not all robots and everyone, but if you have a desire and want to speak with a spiritual director, you're pretty much asking for a deeper relationship with God. That's pretty much your motivation. The spiritual direction is not counseling. It is not a theology. It's not teaching. That's another thing that we have to get into. Spiritual direction is not teaching. Spiritual direction is not for everyone because, like I said, there are certain areas to which certain processes to the journey that you go through. When you're a baby Christian, you're in love with Jesus. You don't need spiritual direction. You don't need the formal spiritual direction. You need direction because you're a baby. You need someone to help you grow up. You need the love and care. And, I do recommend church for that. When you're a baby, go get planted in there, find out what you're supposed to be doing, that proper care. When you're at the discipleship level, you need church for that. You need to be taught. That's a teaching, level that you're at. Spiritual direction is not teaching. Spiritual direction helps you helps you have conversations with God. The spiritual direction, I call it a spiritual hearing aid. It's, some people totally deaf. Some people just hear things the wrong way. So I always reference a hearing aid, just to, you can, just to enhance your hearing, because you might say, well, I hear from the Lord. I heard from the Lord too. But at that stage that I was at, I was not hearing clearly, I don't believe. Or I thought I wasn't hearing clearly. Sometimes it is just confirmation that, yes, you are hearing clearly, because I don't know about you, but, my relationship with God, sometimes it's like, are you serious? Like, and you see that throughout the Bible. God's, to us, says some things that are, that's weird. I don't want to use the word crazy, but I'll use the word crazy. Hope it doesn't offend anyone. But, sometimes we go, God, are you serious? Sometimes we need permission to be angry with God, because, that's what we need permission to question God, because that was a lot of my angst was I was not able to question God with the questions that I really wanted the answers to. I was giving the questions that, I thought were okay or that I wouldn't get in trouble for, but I wasn't getting the information that I needed. So spiritual direction really helped me be in a safe, because a true spiritual director, it's confidential. That's the difference between just getting a friend and talking on the phone. A true spiritual director, the time that you have, it is confidential. It is personal. It is not a group Bible study. I know sometimes I shrunk back in Bible studies because, after people give their fabulous testimony you know, uh, or ask their questions like, oh, well, that question is so much more important than mine. Or, well, I didn't get those results. Does God not like me again? So that's why I love spiritual direction. It's personal, it's soul care, and it's confidential. I mean, there are some things that I've told my spiritual director that I have not even shared with my best friend. And it's not that I don't trust her. It's just the environment, it's a sacred environment that brings out those types of things. It's like it creates an environment and an atmosphere that the questions, the longing of your hearts, the desires come out. Now, we talked about spiritual formation. We've talked about spiritual direction. Like I said, we'll be getting more into all of that. This is just a quick preview of, what's going to happen in this podcast. And it's going to be a lot more fun. Like I said, this is my first one. I just wanted to get all of that information out. Now, the title of the podcast is Temper Tantrums and Transformation. So we've talked about things that contributed to my transformation. And with your permission, I would just love to share some of the tantrums that I had with you. And I would love for you to share some of the tantrums that you're having with me. I know sometimes that doesn't happen all the time. So I will, trust me, be on I'm okay with sharing my tantrums. Like, I have so many tantrums that, I ask God, how do you even put up with me? That's number one. Number two, I have a lot of people say, oh my gosh, I can't believe you said that to God. And I'm like, oh, he's already thinking it, so why wouldn't I say it? Part of my journey is that I did not get saved for real until I think my mid 30s. So I didn't grow up with a lot of the bondage. Oof, not everyone that grew up in a religious environment, it's bondage. I'm saying the true bondage of, you can't say that to God. You can't do that. You can't be that. On further episodes, we'll go further into on more episodes, we'll go further into my story, because I could just rattle off all day, all of the adventures. And we don't, I'm not going to do that today when we have so many other podcast episodes to do. But I was always an obedient child, but at a certain point, it's like, I need to know. I'll say I'm obedient if I know why. Like, okay, if you give me the reason to do it, I'll do it. So what happened with my journey was I was obedient. I got saved, and I did not get saved because I was in love with Jesus. I got saved because people told me that he could fix my life. And I reached a point where, I've done everything that I can. I call it, chasing after the wind. I did everything I could. I graduated from college. I had a great job. Yes, I was divorced, but I got remarried. I didn't, I had the 2.5 children, actually 4. So I had everything that everyone said that I was supposed to have. I was in a career field. I got promoted, blah, 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 blah. And then my husband and I started having problems. And, okay, this is going to be a quick story. The reason I got saved is because they had made a bet against the odds of me and my husband staying together after we got married, because we both had very, very, very strong personalities. So my strong personality was like, I'm not going to let them win. So I went to church and I said, you know what? They say that this Jesus, now I knew who he was. I had heard of him before. I mean, I'm not to pretend to be ignorant. I just didn't think that I needed him. And this was something that I couldn't fix on my own. So it's like, well, we'll just try church, and, we'll get one of those stories that I hear so many people say that God saved my marriage. So long story short, we went to church, we got saved. I fell in love with Jesus, but it felt like the unrequited love. It's like, I dig who you are, Jesus. However, I'm not getting like those benefits that, people say. I didn't get that experience of mush and love. I didn't, when hands were laid on me, I didn't fall to the ground and say like, oh, I was so jealous of the people. It felt like hot love was dripping all over me. Oh, I was so jealous. Like, how come he doesn't like me? So then it's like I started working on myself. Like, well, maybe I need to dress a certain way, and because I'm in church now. So I went out and I bought the ugliest dresses that I could find. I don't know why I thought that ugly equaled holy, but that's what I did. I did that, and I just kept questioning God, like, why don't you like me? Why won't you talk to me? As a matter of fact, the very first religious Christian book that I read was How to Hear from God by Joyce Meyer, because that was always my desire. Like, I just wanted to know, why am I here? What's the point? What's the purpose? Why am I here? So with that being said, I, started delving in there, and eventually I did hear from God, but I didn't get the warm fuzzies. We would have conversations all the time, and I was still looking for that feeling. So I was always felt like I was missing out, even though I had a conversation with him on a regular basis. And then I started missing out on, like, am I not living my purpose? Like, what am I here for? So we'll fast forward a little bit. Like I said, there'll be a lot of stories further to come. Then I got to the point where I couldn't hear from God. And that was very strange, or I thought I wasn't hearing from God. My life was not going the way I planned it. And I'd listened to God. So I'm like, hey, you're not blessing me for my obedience. Like, what happened? And in the book, The Critical Journey, it's explained as my journey turned inward. I started questioning a lot of what I was hearing over the pulpit. And I was trying not to question. Have you ever done that, where you're just like, no, I'm not supposed to be thinking this way? That was me for a season. I was like driving myself crazy because I was questioning, but no, don't question. And then I questioned, and oh, I'm such a horrible person to have these questions. But at the same time, hey, I want the answers to these questions. So, that happened. Then a lot of other things happened concerning where I was going to church. I started, hearing things about my purpose, and I started writing books. I started speaking. But what I was doing, even though it was what God had told me to do, I wasn't respected by some people. And it wasn't defined as ministry. And it kind of hurt my feelings, because I'm like, hey, God is telling me to do this. It was defined as, oh, it's cute. Or, oh, look at you trying to do something, and it upset me. I mean, maybe I was a little bit in pride, I can say that, but I was really like, God is telling me to do this. It's not to be, it was dismissed. Let's put it that way. I'll say it was, the attitude was dismissive, and I know a lot of women get that. I don't know. I don't believe that mine was dismissed. My ministry was dismissed because I was a woman. I honestly believe my ministry was dismissed because I didn't have the terminology. I didn't have it was too fun. Now that's where I'm at in this stage. I am not going to go further into that because I have not interviewed everyone that said that I was, that did not respect my ministry. So I'm not going to go too much further into that. However, that's just a little bit of my story. And like I said, I kept questioning, like, God, are you sure you called me to do this? And one of the things that I wrote in my book was there was a big trust issue between me and God. And one of the reason, the reason, and I will never forget uttering these words. I said, God, I don't trust you. That's bad enough. But I was like, I don't trust you because you don't know what you're doing, because you chose someone like me. Or you chose me, period. Like, you can't know what you're doing for what you've called me to do. You would never call me to do it. So that we're gonna, we're fast forwarding through a lot of things, but that took years for me to say he made a good choice. Now everything else he does, thank you, Lord, you've made the best choice. Oh, thank you, Lord, for sending me in this direction for my journey. Oh, you're a good God, all that other stuff. But I couldn't believe anything when it came to me. And that's part of the inward journey that we will be discussing, because this podcast is designed for when you start turning inward, you start looking at you and God. You start questioning, some of the things that you've heard, read, been taught to believe. And that's where I kind of want to leave off on that, because when you start questioning, and I kind of just hit a wall, and that's part of the critical journey as well. You hit a wall. And like I said, the stuff stopped working. I could not get over it. I couldn't dig under it. I couldn't smash through it. I tried prayer, increased my prayer. I tried fasting. Now, fasting was my thing. I'm telling you, every time I fasted, I would get a breakthrough. It was not breaking through this. It was not breaking through my head. I'm pointing to my head. It was not reaching what needed to be reached. That's how I felt. So let me think. Confessions. I tried confessions. I tried, like, maybe I need to forgive. All of this stuff that people say, well, you're not doing this. You're not doing this. You've lost your first love. You need to go back to the beginning. Blah, 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 blah. I didn't need to go back to the beginning at that point. I needed to get through that wall. And that's part of the process, is allowing God to help you meet that wall. And that wall is your will and God's will clashing, because God's will was for me to complete the journey that he had set forth for my life. My will was, I'm not good enough. You've made the wrong decision. I just wanted to be a servant. I would do anything that he told me, but his will for me was to have me in the family of an intimate relationship. And I just wanted him to bark orders to me, because that's easier. Just give me the order, and give me the map, and give me the money, and give me the time, and make it as comfortable as possible. And then I'll go. So it's like, even in my decisions, in my grandeur, it was, yes, I'll do anything you say, but you still have to meet these conditions. Oh, I laugh so hard thinking about that now. But that was the thing of, I thought I was being the good, perfect, obedient girl, and God was trying to show me some things that I didn't want to see. So that's what happens. The wall is where your will meets God's will. And then you're going to have to make a decision. I like to think of it in the scriptures. It's kind of like the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus said, not my will, but yours. And I know, and I mean, it's so easy to read that and say, oh, we're going to say that when that time comes. That's the purpose of this podcast. When you realize, I'm not saying that. I'm not doing all the things that I said I would do when I read those Bible stories. I'm not who I thought I was. And it's no condemnation. This is a judgment-free zone. It's a no condemnation. This is not how you say a should type of podcast, because we're not teaching. We're experiencing. I'm walking with you. We're on the journey together, because I love being on the journey together. As a matter of fact, someone got onto me on Facebook and said, you're never going to make any money in business. I had my own business because you don't have the confidence to, lead. And I said, and it was so pure, because I didn't even think about it. It's like, I'm not interested in leading. I'm the type, I just want to grab your hand and say, hey, you want to go there? Let's go together. And that's what spiritual direction is. It's soul care. It is being able to say what you want to say, ask what you want to ask, and not just to dump on someone. You say what you want to say, you ask what you want to ask, you explore what you want to explore, and then you wait with someone to hear God answer you. And that's the most powerful thing. It's not a prayer where you say, God, I want this, and you get up and leave. Spiritual direction, you meet, you sit, you talk, you bask in the ambience. And, I hope that I'm saying all this right, because it's just so much to try to explain it's kind of like you can't explain, you have to experience. So there are so many sides and so many things that I do. So I'm going to definitely try to keep this definitely for the purpose of spiritual formation and spiritual for direction. But there are going to be some stories that slip out, definitely because of my tantrums. Like, I want you to know you're in good company when it comes to this. So I'm going to hang on. So I'm going to wrap this up, I guess, because this is longer than I thought I was going to talk. And I can't wait for the next episode. We have so many fun episodes coming. So I just wanted to give you the basis of what spiritual direction is, what spiritual formation is, and we'll just move on from there. Okay. I hope to see you on the next broadcast. You can always reach me at www.onewoman.org. Make sure the one is WON.org. So thank you guys for listening. I don't know how to officially sign off. I'm going to learn. I'm learning too. So thanks for listening. I guess I'll talk to you later.